Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. So, the House just passed another $95 billion bill for Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan, and $60 billion is going to Ukraine, about $14 billion to Israel, about $9 billion to Taiwan, and a lot of questions are being raised about what is the purpose of this? What is really the intention here? Because you can see our legislators, as soon as the bill passed, a bunch of the Democrats pulled out their Ukrainian flags and waved them around. They would never, ever think about doing that with American flags. And on the right, they can't get enough money for Israel. That's their first priority. So both sides of the aisle are putting another country above the United States. And it's America third. That's the new party. That's the party that's in charge. It's a uniparty. It's both sides collectively have agreed that Americans should be way down on the list in terms of priority. First and foremost is Israel, our alleged greatest ally, who apparently is so great that they need constant money from the United States. Money that could be used here to solve many, many of our internal problems that we still have. But instead, going over to Israel, unquestioned, can't get enough of it. And then next on the list, Ukraine, even the Republicans still think we should give money to Ukraine. It's been years, 2 years now, 3 years almost, and we just keep pumping more money into them, and they're losing. We're not seeing any results. Zelensky is willing to fight to the last man, now wants to draft all the women. He wants not a single Ukrainian left alive, clearly, and he's going to spend our money to do it. And America's money, not only just in these cases, but it ends up all over the world. We fund all sides of every war because we can, because it benefits us, because it benefits the people who make the weapons, who make the equipment. And I think most people are starting to realize that this is just not something we want to do anymore. It's not something we want to fund anymore. We don't want to keep throwing away hundreds of billions of dollars to causes that don't in any direct way help the United States. When you look at things like inflation, when you look at the price of housing, when you look at the price of food, when you look at the crime, when you look at all these problems happening internally in America, most people don't want to look externally because it's not as important. And where are they going to get this $100 billion? Are they going to take it from your taxes? Or are they going to print it? Either way, it's a huge tax, right? One is literally a tax, and the other, inflation, is a tax on the price of your dollar, which is going to decrease its value because they're just going to print it. Doesn't affect us, I guess, is what they're thinking. It doesn't affect the ruling class, obviously. It affects the average citizen, but who cares about them? And then what happens to you? You get stuck with the bill either way, and your money becomes worth less, and you have less of it. All for the sake of foreign countries and their interests that have somehow lobbied their way into America. And I think more and more people don't want to see this happen. They want to become more isolationist. They want to say that we're uninterested in starting wars. We're uninterested in continuing wars. Israel's now on the border of a war with Iran, all because they keep escalating this conflict. And do we really want to encourage that? Do we really want to give them money? Do we really want to be their cash cow on their beck and call? Ukraine and Israel, and even Taiwan. We have some allegiance to these countries, but at what point are we just being used? At what point does our logistical aid we get from them, our interests overseas, at what point is that outweighed by the sheer amount of unloyalty to the American people? By totally putting them last on the list, and yet taking all their money and sending it overseas. At what point do the American people say this is no longer in our interests? And even to say, why are we doing something that's not in our interests? You're called heartless, and you're pro-Russia, or you're pro-Hamas, or you hate X group of people. It's like, no, I'm just asking a question. What is the point of doing any of this? Why do any of this? How does it benefit America? Give me a step by step, and no one can seem to do that. They just say, oh, it's our duty to help other countries. What about our citizens? If things were great here, that's one thing. That's one thing if you could send money overseas, you could help out a little bit, you could send aid in any way. But we're not doing that. Americans are suffering right now across the board, physically, mentally, spiritually, any capacity you want to talk about. The loneliness epidemic, no sense of community. We're a very distrustful culture because of the high rising crime rates. People are scared to death of like the drug epidemic that's going on with the fentanyl. All these things internally, and no, not that important. Not as important as sending money overseas. That's very important, clearly. And they like cheer, they scream and cheer about how much they love these other countries, but they don't care about America. They don't care about Americans. And I think Americans want to see them being taken care of, right? As long as there's potholes on the road, why are we worrying about anybody else? And that may sound silly, but it starts there, right? Like the most benign things are not being taken care of in America. We have so many places that you can't, it's like cities you can't go into because you'll just literally die. Like every major city, if you go and visit your friends and relatives in major cities like New York or Chicago or LA, just be like, yeah, you just can't go here because you will literally die. It's like, yeah, we just let that happen in America. We just have third world cities because we can, because all that money is getting siphoned out somewhere that's supposed to be going and helping those, or we just don't care. We just don't see it as a problem. Just, oh, we have to live with it, even though that's simply not the case, because other countries don't have those same problems, but we do, and we continue to let them happen. We gaslight our own people into believing that they're always going to happen, and the best thing, the most virtuous thing they can do is to help people around the world in situations that are either totally collapsing or we've escalated or we've gotten involved with and usually made things worse. And we're asked to sacrifice for people who treat us like a cash cow. At the end of the day, we're just their cash cow. That's what America is to a lot of these countries around the world. They're willing to insult us, belittle us, disrespect us until the second they need our money, and then, or our military force, and then they come crying back to us and say, you're a bad person, America, if you don't help us on our beck and call, whatever we want. And I see the future of that turning into a future where America in general, pulls out more from the world stage and says, this is not our problem. It's not. We're a country. We are not the world. We are one country. We're very blessed. We were. And now we've had all these problems that have come up, and suddenly we're not so blessed. We're not in such a lucrative financial state that we can be giving handouts to everybody, that we can put a reputation on the line, or willing to go to war with everybody, because people don't want that. We're so unpopular now. I can't imagine any a regular person wanting to go to war with Iran, wanting to go to war in Israel, wanting to go war against Russia. Our elites talk about it all the time. It may be our honor-bound duty to do this, and Americans aren't biting. They're not biting for it. They don't want it. They don't want involvement in any of these conflicts. And I think it's a huge weakness to both of these parties is they're kind of, playing it off like this is just something we have to do, and there's nothing more noble. It's like, this is what you get together to do, spend our money elsewhere, not actually helping Americans in their time of need, and you expect Americans to not want to pull out of the world stage. It's like, give me a break. I don't see how this ends well for like the American regime internationally. Either we spread ourselves too thin, get eaten away by our internal domestic issues, or we totally pull out of the world stage and can recondense and, let whatever happens. And that's not a good place to be. We should have this balancing act of helping countries when it's absolutely necessary, when it's available to us as an option, when we have the ability to do so, out of our benevolence, out of our sheer excess that we allegedly have, that we should have, and otherwise don't do that. And right now we don't have the luxury to do that. We give money to basically every country in the world. We can't keep doing that because the American dollar is becoming worthless. And the American people can feel it. And clearly going into this next election, the number one issue is the economy. There's nothing that's more important than the economy. Feeding your family, getting a job, the rising prices of everything, nothing is more important than that. And a direct cause of that is the amount of inflation we incur by sending all this money overseas, and the amount of just kind of sheer taxes people are hit with, whether it's like a literal tax or just like the cost of goods that are rising because of that the fact that people's money, they have less of it and it goes less far because of the inflation. People are being eaten on both ends by that, and they can't take it anymore. And so this like celebrations, flag waving, this like there's nothing more important than Israel and Ukraine, this message is really starting to tick Americans off. They're really unhappy with it because it's America third, in the prime of the American first movement on the right. And I know people on the left aren't like a huge fan of that, but I think soon they will be. Like, America first, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be conservative politics. It just means this country is most important. Let's focus on our internal conflicts. Like, we can even hash out our differences internally. You know, who should take command of America for Americans, the left or right? And I think more people on the left will accept that, and definitely more people on the right are accepting that. But that shows that this American third movement that's happening in Congress, namely led by Mike Johnson, who looks like he's close to getting removed because of it, namely that's going to fall apart. People are not America third, they're not America second, they're America first. And that is what's going to be the next kind of ideal that Americans are going to strive for. That's going to be the next philosophy that dictates the next decade, is what are we doing and how can we put America first again? And how can we detach that thought process from just like Donald Trump, right? How can it extend beyond Donald Trump to all Americans, all demographics of Americans, all political beliefs? How can we put America first? How can we separate that from one man into an entire country? So now that you've heard what I think, please let me know what you think down in the comments below. Do you think we should keep giving money overseas? And if so, to what capacity? Is there a limit to how much we support these countries? Or should we, because we're paying for it, should we have say in how they handle their affairs, whether they surrender or fight? Should we be able to dictate that if we're funding it? Let me know all that down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.